After you've run your query, the next step is to go and compose your report. And as you can see in the wizard here, the next step is indicated, so you can click on the report composer. And what is a report composer? The report composer is this system we built into Fawn that gives you access to different types of reports that can be useful depending on the type of query you run. So in this particular case, I will clear my list first, and so we run a query on the word andere, and it could be that I want to report on the use of this word using like having a count, for example, by session or by participant. So we have inventory reports that can be used for that. Or we could look at getting just the number of results per session in an aggregate, which gives us a grid, where the when on the left hand side we would have the forms that are returned by the query, and on the top of the grid we would have every session that's relevant to the query, and so on. So Fawn gives you different report types, and in order to keep the tutorial short here, I don't want to go into the detail of it all. I would rather invite you to explore what those different reports are. But just for exemplification here, I will compose a report by adding the aggregate and adding an inventory by session and also a listing by session of my results. And so we have different types of reports that will be combined, or different sections for a report that will be combined together. And for every one report type, what we have are a bunch of options for configuration. So if you look at the aggregate could be organized by data session or by the child's age. If you look at the and the sorting could be done alphabetically or using other methods, and I'll return to these methods mostly in the context of the phones query. If we look at the inventory by session, that's the same thing. So we could, like, just to be consistent, because we use the age as a organizing node in our report, then we want to stick to age here as well, so that the reports are compatible with one another in their formatting. And in the listing by session, then you can see that I got a bunch of options about adding participant information, yes or no. So we will not add participant information in this particular case. And we could include different tier data or just stick to the factory report, which is really determined by the query here. So if we run that report, then what Fawn does at that point is it will look at the query results on the one hand and organize those results according to the three sections that we combine together in our composed report. And you can see Fawn's doing the work here for the results for every one session that we queried. So all we have to do here is be a little bit patient, and but in 23 seconds here, what we obtained is an aggregate, so we can see how many times we ran into the corpus contains the word andere across different sessions, which is also organized by ages here. And for every one session, then we have an inventory by session, so that you can see here that the data are identical, they're just organized differently depending on your needs. And finally, if we look at the last result, what we have is every one result listed one by one, which seems a little repetitive here, but that's because our query was looking at a single word only. And now if you look at this report preview and you realize, oh no, I'm missing information about in my report, then you can always go back to the composer. And here, for example, I want to include some tier data, so I would want to have, for example, my orthography. And I also want to have my IP target tier and my IP actual tier, and also maybe my notes to be included in the report. And my inventory by session was well organized and my aggregate was well organized, so I have no problem there. But by looking at my report, I'm realizing that my inventory by session doesn't give me much more information than my aggregate, so I could decide to remove that section from the report and then run my report again. Confirm, and again wait for a few seconds to get the report to be done, which should take about 15 seconds or so. And here what we can see is that we still have our aggregate. We have removed the inventory by session, but now we have the listing by session, and for every one entry we get to see the IPA, the orthography, the IPA target, and the IPA actual. In case the prints are too small, we also have an option to make the report larger. You can always right-click and zoom in to get your report larger. Okay, or smaller, you can zoom out. And at that point, this report is really a preview, and the preview report is really useful in that, as I mentioned in a different tutorial, every time we have a result listed, that result is effectively hot linked to the original record data. So if you're interested in seeing this example in particular, you can always click on it and Fawn will open the session with the result that you're interested in highlighted in the interface. So that enables you to have a look at your data before you move your report to the next step. After you've pre-visualized your report within Fawn and you're happy with the results, at that point you are ready to save your report for further use. So what you see here is within the preview is an HTML report with all the formatting. And another note there is the burger menu that you can use to access different sections of your report, which is also very useful in case you have a complex report that you want to navigate. So the first and most obvious save would be to save that file as an HTML file that you can then use for sharing with people. And HTML is useful in that it maintains all the formatting and also will maintain this table of contents. And so to save that report, all you have to do is hit the save button and give your report a name. And at that point, Fawn will save the report and open it within the web browser. And so you can see that the exact same report is available in your web browser, with the difference that the results now are no longer linked to the database. So the way to bring this example up within your Fawn database can only happen from within the Fawn report preview. In case you want to further work on these reports, change their formatting, for example, or incorporate them as part of presentations and so on, oftentimes it's more useful to export the report in a more easily editable format. And Fawn, in this regard, offers a few options. You could export your report, your whole table, as part of an organized Excel workbook. We'll see that in a second. You could export every section of your report into a series of Excel worksheets. And finally, you could export your report as a CSV file, or actually in a series of CSV files that you can then open in software packages such as LibreOffice or SPSS or R for different treatment there, depending on your needs. So just to exemplify one of these options, I will save my report as an Excel workbook just by clicking on the option. And here Fawn will give me a small wizard that enables me to select what parts of my report preview I want to incorporate in my workbook. And once I'm happy with the options, and here I won't change anything, you can just click on export, and I will call this one my report and save it on my desktop, at which point Fawn will create an Excel report that I can then use within the Excel application.